I used to believe that love was the one thing that could never betray me. Growing up, I learned that family would disappoint you, friends would change, and life would throw unexpected curveballs. But love was supposed to be sacred, unbreakable. That belief shattered the moment I walked into my boyfriend's apartment and found my sister, Emily, in his bed. I had always known that Emily could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. She was the golden child, the beautiful, charming, and adored younger daughter who could get away with anything. No matter what she did, my parents would always excuse her behavior, spinning it into something praiseworthy. If she failed an exam, it was because the teacher was unfair. If she hurt someone's feelings, it was because she was just being honest. And if she stole my boyfriend, well, according to my parents, that wasn't betrayal, it was love. I didn't go looking for heartbreak that day. I had spent the morning running errands, picking up some groceries, and getting Liam's favorite coffee from the cafe down the street. He had been acting distant lately, so I thought a little gesture might brighten his day. I even picked up a few things for dinner, thinking we could spend the evening together, just the two of us. But when I stepped into his apartment, the air was thick with something different, something wrong. I set the coffee and groceries on the kitchen counter, calling out, "Liam, you here?" Silence. Then a sound of muffled laugh followed by a hushed whisper. It came from the bedroom. My heart pounded as I walked toward the door, my fingers tightening around the doorknob. The moment I pushed it open, my world collapsed. There they were. Emily, my perfect little sister, tangled in Liam's sheets, her arms wrapped around him like she belonged there. They weren't even startled when I barged in. Liam sat up lazily, his expression unreadable, while Emily simply stretched, a satisfied smirk on her lips. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The betrayal was too much. Are you serious? My voice came out barely above a whisper. Emily glanced at me with an amused expression. Oh, hey, Linda. Oh, hey, Linda. That was all she had to say. Liam, the man I had loved, had trusted, didn't even have the decency to look guilty. I was going to tell you, he said, as if that would somehow make it better. You were going to tell me. I repeated, my voice rising. Tell me what? That you've been sleeping with my sister. That everything we had meant nothing. Emily let out a sigh, as if she was the victim in all this. Come on, don't be so dramatic. Liam and I just have a connection. I felt sick. A connection. She rolled her eyes. You should be happy for me. I finally found someone I love. I stared at her in disbelief. You love him. Emily, he was my boyfriend. Liam shrugged. It just happened, Linda, we didn't plan it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But instead, I turned on my heel and walked out. I wasn't going to let them see me break. I went straight to my parents' house. Surely they would be on my side. Surely even they wouldn't excuse this. But I should have known better. When I told them what had happened, they exchanged glances before my mother let out a heavy sigh. Oh, Linda, she said, shaking her head as if I were the one who had done something wrong. My father leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. I don't understand why you're making such a fuss. Love isn't something you can control. I felt like I was in a nightmare. She slept with my boyfriend. My mother pursed her lips. Emily didn't steal him. If Liam truly loved you, he wouldn't have looked elsewhere. Maybe you should reflect on why he did. I nearly staggered back from the blow of those words. Are you seriously blaming me? My father sighed. Emily is young. She didn't mean to hurt you. She didn't mean to hurt me. I repeated, incredulous. She had no remorse. She told me to be happy for her. My mother reached over, patting my hand as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. Because she loves him. You should be happy that your sister found love. That was it. I had nothing left to say. If they couldn't see the problem in what had happened, then there was no reasoning with them. I stood up, my voice shaking with anger. I can't believe this. You're choosing her over me again. Linda, my mother said, as if she were scolding a child. Stop being selfish. Selfish. That was the final straw. If that's how you see it, then I'm done. I grabbed my bag, heading for the door. Where do you think you're going? My father demanded. I turned to face them. Away from all of you. My mother sighed dramatically. If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. I lifted my chin. Good. And with that, I left. I was broken, but I was free. For months, I worked on rebuilding myself. I found solace in my best friend Brian, who reminded me that I wasn't alone. I threw myself into my career, focused on my happiness, and slowly, I healed. Then, I met Daniel. He was everything Liam wasn't, kind, patient, and incredibly supportive. He never made me feel like I was second best. He never made me question my worth. For the first time in a long time, I was genuinely happy. A year later, when he proposed, I didn't hesitate to say yes. I was finally moving forward, leaving the past behind. But then, my mother called. Her voice was frantic, filled with urgency. Linda, you need to come home. It's an emergency. Despite everything, a small part of me still cared. So, against my better judgment, I went. When I arrived, expecting the worst, I found my parents sitting calmly in the living room. My mother folded her hands on her lap, studying me carefully. We heard you're getting married, she said. I let out a bitter laugh. That's what this is about. My father cleared his throat. We should have been invited. I scoffed. You disowned me. My mother waved that off like it was a minor inconvenience. That's in the past. I shook my head. You have got to be kidding me. Then my mother's expression changed, turning almost pleading. Linda, we need your help. I crossed my arms. With what? She hesitated, then sighed. It's about Emily. I felt nothing at the mention of her name. What about her? She's pregnant. I stared at her, unimpressed, and she was abandoned, my father added. The father left. I shrugged. Not my problem. My mother reached for my hand, desperation in her eyes. You have to take care of the baby. I yanked my hand away. Excuse me. She has no one else, my mother insisted. And it's your fault. I let out a cold laugh. My fault. You knew he was a scumbag, my father said. You should have warned her. I stared at them in disbelief. You want me to raise my sister's child? After everything she did to me? My mother sighed. Fine, then. Give Daniel to her. The room went silent. I blinked. What? You owe her, my mother said firmly. Since you won't take care of the baby, give Emily your fiancé. He'll be a good father. I laughed so hard it hurt. You've lost your minds. My father frowned. Linda, be reasonable. But I wasn't listening. I stood up, shaking my head. Enjoy your grandchild. And with that, I walked away this time for good. I walked out of my parents' house for the second time in my life. But this time, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just cold, detached amusement at how absurd they had become. Give Daniel to Emily. Raise the child of the woman who ruined my life. If it weren't so insulting, it would have been laughable. As I stepped outside, I took a deep breath, letting the crisp city air clear. The last traces of that toxic conversation from my mind. I was done. They had disowned me once, and I should have left them in the past where they belonged. But this time, I wouldn't even give them the satisfaction of hearing my pain. When I got back to my apartment, Brian was waiting for me. He had always been the one person I could count on. The one person who never chose Emily over me. He took one look at my face and sighed. I take it the emergency was just another episode of Emily's life is more important than yours? I snorted. They want me to raise her baby. Brian's eyes widened. Wait, what? I tossed my bag onto the couch and collapsed beside him. Oh, and when I refused, they told me to hand over Daniel instead. Ryan blinked. Then, without warning, he burst into laughter. I'm sorry, he wheezed. I know this isn't funny, but what the hell is wrong with your family? I smirked. Where do I even begin? Brian wiped a tear from his eye, still chuckling. So, let me get this straight. They kicked you out because Emily stole your boyfriend. And now that she got dumped, they expect you to clean up the mess. Pretty much. Brian shook his head. Unbelievable. Please tell me you told them to go to hell. I grinned. More or less. He leaned back, a satisfied look on his face. Good. It's about time you stopped letting them treat you like a backup plan. And he was right. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking for their approval. I wasn't hurt by their rejection. I was free. I didn't bother blocking their numbers, but I ignored every call and message that followed. The first few were guilt trips, my mother begging me to reconsider. My father reminding me of my duty as a sister. Then, when I didn't respond, the messages turned nasty. Mom, I can't believe you're this selfish. Linda. Dad, family takes care of each other. I hope you can live with yourself. Mom, Emily is suffering because of you. And finally, the last desperate attempt. Mom, if you don't care about your sister, at least care about the baby. An innocent child shouldn't suffer because of your pettiness. I didn't reply, because the truth was, I didn't care. Emily had made her choices, and now she was facing the consequences. That wasn't my problem. And as for my parents, they had made it clear a long time ago who they valued more. So now they could deal with the fallout on their own. Daniel was everything I had ever wanted in a partner. When I told him what happened, he didn't hesitate for a second. I can't believe they think they have any right to demand that from you, he said, shaking his head. They don't deserve you, Linda. I smiled. I know. And I'm done trying to prove my worth to them. So when our wedding day arrived, there were no empty seats reserved for my parents. No invitations sent to Emily. It was a beautiful ceremony, filled with laughter, love, and the people who truly cared about me. Ryan gave the best speech of the night. To Linda, the strongest person I know. May your future be filled with nothing but happiness. And may your past stay exactly where it belongs behind you. The crowd erupted in cheers, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Months passed, and life was perfect. Until one day, Brian sent me a message with a link. Ryan, you're gonna love this. Curious, I clicked the link and nearly choked on my coffee. It was an article. Scandal rocks Emily Gray. Fraud, debt, and betrayal exposed. I skimmed through the details, my heart pounding with exhilaration. Apparently, Emily had tried to trap her baby's father by faking an engagement. But when he found out, he left her for someone else. Desperate for money. She had taken out massive loans she had no way of repaying. And now her life was falling apart for everyone to see. I laughed, shaking my head. Well. Daniel peered over my shoulder, reading the article. Karma's a beautiful thing, isn't it? Oh, absolutely. For years, Emily had stolen, manipulated, and betrayed everyone around her. And now, there was no one left to clean up her mess. A few days later, my mother sent one final text. Mom, Emily is struggling. She has nothing. Please, Linda, she needs you. I stared at the message for a long time. Then, with a smirk, I typed my response. Me, I'm sure you'll figure it out. After all, you always said she could do no wrong. And then, I blocked her number. I never looked back. Emily's downfall was inevitable. My parents' favoritism had created a monster, and now they were paying the price. As for me, I was happy. I had a husband who adored me, friends who truly cared, and a life free from the toxic weight of my past. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like second best. I felt like I had finally won.